So many people ask me, how do you recognize a dismissive avoidant? Whether it's your coworker, whether it's somebody on a first date, or somebody you're getting to know as you start dating them, somebody that you're maybe on a dating app talking to, or even a friend or family member who you've always wondered about their attachment style and why the relationship is confusing. Well, in today's video, I am going to break down 20 unmistakable traits of a dismissive avoidant so that you can recognize them fast. Also, we'll talk a little bit about how this person ends up changing, healing, growing, so you have some insight into whether or not this is actually even possible or something this person is going to do. One of the first things you'll tend to notice about a dismissive avoidant upon meeting them is they can be a little bit slow to warm up. They can be perhaps a little cold, a tiny bit standoffish, and it takes them a little bit of time to generally kind of lower their wall and open up and become more warm and feel more like they can be themselves and become a little bit more expressive. It won't necessarily mean that somebody will be really quiet, although of course that's one manifestation of it, that somebody can be more shy and quiet, but also it can be that a dismissive avoidant is sort of social, but a little standoffish, and they aren't really asking questions and staying super present with somebody upon first meeting them. And really what that pertains to is just their guard that they have up, and that guard that comes from being emotionally neglected in childhood and wanting to sort of keep that guard up because human connection often felt unsafe or rejecting. And so there's this deep subconscious assumption that that will be the experience in their adult lives, and they will sort of connect through that wall accordingly. Another really common trait you'll see is that dismissive avoidants tend to reject bids. There's a wonderful study done out of the Gottman Institute that talked about how one of the most important things that determined the overall quality and health and longevity of a relationship was whether or not a partner, when they made a bid to the other partner, accepted that bid. And what I mean by that is a bid can be something like, "It's such a beautiful day outside," or "Oh, look at the sunset." And if somebody engages in those comments and that attempt to sort of engage the other person in a conversation or in acknowledging a shared experience, like looking at the sunset together. And dismissive avoidants will often reject bids. Again, this isn't necessarily like all bids all the time, but they tend to do it more than other attachment styles. And part of it's because they're kind of living in their own world and sort of in their own space. And another part of it is because they usually are operating from sort of like a shrunken emotional bandwidth. They usually don't have a lot of emotional availability, A, because they're in the habit of repressing their own emotions, and B, because they're usually operating in a low-level sympathetic nervous system mode, aka low-level fight or flight. And so this brings me to some of the future points, which is that sometimes we'll see dismissive avoidance as a result of that low-level fight or flight experience more emotions along the lines of low-level anxiety, irritability, low-level frustration. They may be restless. And a lot of these things actually represent being in that fight or flight state a lot of the time because they're sort of in that small degree of anxiety. Although this may not be something that you necessarily recognize out of the gates, dismissive avoidants will tend to be much more sensitive to criticism than they would ever let on. Externally, they may show that they aren't bothered by criticism at all, and they're unaffected by other people's thoughts, opinions, or comments, but deep down, they actually take quite poorly to criticism. They can be very sensitive to it. It can land in a really heavy way, and they'll tend to react to these things by shutting down. That tends to be one of the biggest coping mechanisms of a dismissive avoidant, is to shut down, kind of shut people out, sometimes stonewall in an argument. And a big part of this is because dismissive avoidants don't necessarily have the tools that were modeled to them to resolve conflict, to work through things, to communicate openly. And it's not really their fault. Usually dismissive avoidants just had a lot of neglect in childhood, whether it was overt neglect, like literally neglect of even their daily needs, having food on the table, having structure, stability at home, or more covert neglect, like just really not talking about emotions, being shamed for your emotions, not really having discussions that engage how somebody's feeling or checking in. Sometimes more of that covert neglect is what creates dismissive avoidant attachment style. And it may be something that the DA themselves doesn't even realize that they went through. It's almost like a hidden trauma. So you'll see a lot of that dynamic of the irritability, anxiety, frustration. When a dismissive avoidant is in that experience of that low-level anxiety, that's where they become the most dismissive. It's like they're coping and they're just trying to kind of survive and focus on themselves. And if you've ever had the experience of being in fight or flight mode, like maybe you're late to something or you're stressed or you're worried, you're less available to people, you're less engaging, you're less present with other people's experiences because you're kind of just in survival mode, like focusing on yourself and how you're going to navigate. And this is sort of like the state a lot of dismissive avoidants are sort of living in. So a lot of DAs, although they may not consciously recognize that they're having that anxiety and they're very accustomed to living in that mode, that can be a big part of what produces that dismissiveness and that avoidance, right? Like that need to sort of push things out, shut them away, not come back to them, compartmentalize them, which you'll see a lot of dismissive avoidants doing. Dismissive avoidants are also a little bit conflict avoidant. You'll see that dismissive avoidants tend to avoid conflict. They really don't like it. You might think because the DA kind of seems like tough on the outside or strong and independent that they must do well with conflict, but the vast majority of DAs can really go to great lengths to try to actually avoid conflict and really don't like engaging in conflict-oriented situations.
There is currently an epidemic of loneliness happening in our world, and it's being driven even more so by the fact that we now have AI. So people are just constantly seeking this high quantity of connection, but not quality of connection that happens through loneliness, vulnerability, and understanding the intricate dynamics of human relationships. And right now, for a limited time, you can actually gain access for free, for life, literally a lifetime offer. It's a gift to our Overcoming Loneliness and Building Authentic Connections course. This course will give you in-depth materials and resources to build more authentic connections, to know what makes you feel most connected to others, and to understand what makes other people feel most connected to you, and how to rewire limiting beliefs that are blocking your vulnerability or authenticity, as well as other really powerful tips for how to build connection in a meaningful way, whether it be in dating, in romantic relationships, or in friendships. This is a lifetime gift, and it comes for free when you sign up for a 7-day free trial to the Personal Development School, which also gives you access to all of our courses for 7 days. And you can join me in the webinars. You can ask me questions. We literally have live events every single day for so much personalized support. And no matter what, if you cancel before the 7th day even, you still keep that loneliness course for life. So I hope you enjoy this gift, and let's get back to the video.
Dismissive avoidance as well, some other features you'll see is they tend to constantly escape into things. They have this way of like trying to repress their emotions because it makes them feel safer. So as a result, they're constantly escaping themselves. And dismissive avoidants, again, like we talked about, are generally emotionally neglected. So they tend to have a subconscious comfort zone around emotional neglect, meaning their emotions were neglected, so they neglect their own emotions. We tend to, like how our needs were treated in childhood, we tend to treat our own needs that similar way. So you'll see a lot of that take place in the DA specifically. Another big thing is you'll see from that, like escaping into things, a lot of DAs tend to really like fiction, video games, television shows, movies, characters. Like they tend to sort of escape into these kind of magical worlds. And again, you wouldn't know that by like the first impression of a DA because it can be kind of hard to read and sometimes a bit standoffish and seem very independent and grounded and practical and like they have it all together. But there is actually that kind of like romanticized fiction side of a lot of dismissive avoidance. Maybe not every single one, but I would say the vast majority have that side. And again, they're escaping into all of these things as a means to compartmentalize and repress their own emotions. They tend to really value harmony, ease, peace, lightness, making things simple in relationships. They usually want a relationship where there's comfort, safety, harmony, ease and peace, low commitment, where they feel understood, where they feel like somebody respects their need for freedom and autonomy, that they're usually just using as a strategy to regulate their emotional bandwidth. And this is sort of what they look for. And so you'll see as a result of some of those things that deep commitments, a lot of vulnerability in relationships, these will be things that sort of put off a dismissive avoidant quite easily. They can be quite commitment fearing if the ball moves too fast or the needle moves too fast in relationships, and they can sort of get into that place where they push those things away or avoid situations. DAs can be more sarcastic. They can be more blunt. They can sometimes be passive aggressive. And again, it's usually because they're a little bit disconnected from themselves. So when they finally do sort of like feel their emotions or realize something, it can kind of come across in a way that's very direct. It's like they're feeling this way, they're very direct about it, and then they like kind of go back to compartmentalizing their feelings. So you will see a lot of these dynamics taking place. Now, again, there's a lot of like wonderful traits about DAs. So DAs can be very like thoughtful, honest, pragmatic, practical, very intellectual, very grounded. They can deal with pressure quite well in the moment. If there's like a workplace sort of situation, like they've got a lot of these really fantastic qualities. And it's really just in like the emotional relationship side that some of these more negative patterns can come up when it comes to not really recognizing some of these factors at play. So ideally, just like with anybody else, we want to be able to mitigate the downsides of our attachment style or past attachment trauma that's still living in our subconscious mind, while being able to double down on the upsides and our strengths. And that's really how we tend to reach our full potential. So anyways, if you want to do a deeper dive, you can check out that course for 7 days for free using the link below. You can also check out the attachment style quiz if you want to take yours down below as well. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this channel and this content, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. I literally create content every single day on YouTube here. And if you have any questions about dismissive avoidance, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in future videos.